Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our teaching series on the parable of the sower. I thank you all for joining us today. And this week we're going to talk about the parable of the sower, the soil with thorns. So let's get right into the passage of scripture where Jesus is speaking to us in this parable. It's found in Matthew 13 and begins in verse 3. We'll read to verse 8. Matthew 13:3. A farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky places where it didn't have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. When the sun came up, the plants were scorched, and they withered because they had no root. Other seed fell among thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. Still other seed fell among good soil, where it produced a crop, 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. In today's passage, Jesus is talking about thorns that are choking out a plant. And if you think about it, as you till a garden, sometimes everything looks great, and you go out to throw some seeds down or plant some seeds for your garden, and you've tilled it, and you can't see any thorns. And so as you begin to plant the seeds and the plants begin to grow, thorns inevitably come up amongst the seeds. And some cause great havoc in your garden. And what's scary is you can't see them. They're like an underlying problem beneath the soil that begins to grow with this plant. You know, Jesus is talking about a soil condition of the heart. And when we begin to relate that to the story, we see issues that grow in amongst the good and cause problems in it. Let's listen to verse 22 of Matthew 13, where Jesus is explaining what he means. He says, "The seed falling among the thorns refers to someone who hears the word, but the worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth choke the word and make it unfruitful." You know, here Jesus is pointing directly to these worries in life. Worries about the world, worries about money, worries about things, worried about stuff. These worries that are getting in the way of bearing good fruit. You know, many of us know the verse from Galatians 5 that talks about the fruit of the Spirit. It's talking about love and joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. You know, and if you put that into the story, where Jesus is saying that these thorns grow up among the plant and they choke it out and they make it unfruitful. Think about worrying in your own life and how much that can steal your joy, how much that can steal your kindness, how much that can rob you of your faithfulness in God, how much that can change you in how you interact with people and you lose your goodness, your gentleness, and your self-control. You know, think of how thorns in your soil or in your life can rob you of these fruit of the Spirit. You know, Jesus is pointing exactly to that. He's telling us to beware of thorns in our soil, or beware of things that can choke us out and make us unfruitful. He says, beware of the worries of life and the deceitfulness of wealth. And how many of us can get so caught into the busyness of the life, or the business we go about doing, or the things we do. We pack our lives so full, and sometimes they're good things. Sometimes we do good things, but we're doing so many good things that it's taking away from the greater. It's taking away from our time of sitting at the feet of Jesus and getting to know him better and spending time in prayer and seeking his face. We may be doing good things. Working is not a bad thing, but it is when it begins to crowd our lives and choke us out and keep us from seeking God first in our life. That's when it's the problem. You know, I want you worriers who are listening now to think about the things that worry you and how much that can steal from the fruit of your life. Just look at one, how it can steal your joy. I can think of many things I've worried about in life that never even ended up happening. that stole a lot of joy away from my heart and away from my life and affected how I treated people. Or even times I was so consumed with worrying about something I couldn't think of anything else. It's almost like it puts blinders on your eyes. Jesus is showing us a better way. He already has told us in Matthew to not worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow will worry about itself. He's telling us he cares about us and wants to meet with us, and he wants us to take those worries of life and pray about them and say, Lord, help me through them. And so today, as we conclude and looking at this idea of the thorns in the soil, I want you to think of thorns that could come in your spiritual soil and keep you from being unfruitful spiritually. What slows you down in your growth and your maturity towards God? Is there something that needs taken out, or a weed that needs removed, or something where you need to refocus and say, God, I want you first above this thing? Think about those things in your own life. I thank you all for joining us this week, and my prayers for you, those of you who worry this week, to cast those cares on God, because he cares for each and every one of us. Have a great week.